Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that the nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. Many people recognize those lines as the opening portion of the Gettysburg Address. As I continue my look at the Civil War 150 years later, I thought I'd take a look at this particular speech. And Abraham Lincoln was a man known for his oration, for his brilliant words set upon the public. House divided cannot stand. His humor, I had two faces, do you think I'd use this one? But why is it this speech? Why is it this speech that stands out so much among such a great wealth of oration? I have an entire book here of just speeches by Abraham Lincoln, and this isn't even close to all of it. So why is it this speech, this short address, delivered after a very long oration that Abraham Lincoln had quickly scribbled together on a train on his way to Gettysburg, why is it this speech that stands out? Well, let's think about 1863, November, when he delivered it. The Emancipation Proclamation had gone into effect, so it was clear now that the Civil War was about slavery. All men are created equal, even black men. It didn't matter. This nation needed to go back to its founding. It needed to go back to the root of what it was. And now there's a Civil War testing that. And so Abraham Lincoln points out in this consecration of a portion battlefield that this is what they're fighting for. He's sort of summing up for the public what the Civil War is all about. He's encapsulated it in 2 short paragraphs. Let me continue. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here, dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we were highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. So there you have it. It's a rallying cry. Abraham Lincoln is rededicating the North in a time of struggle and dismay as the South had invaded the North. Gettysburg was a time of invasion when the South actually advanced forward into the North, but the North won the battle. They managed to push them back, and now the war was completely contained within the South. And victories in the West had taken place. Vicksburg, the Mississippi River, was now in the hands of the Union Army. They were pushing back across. By the next year, Sherman would make his famous march to the sea. So it was sort of a turning point for the war, and this is the rallying cry. This is the moment when Abraham Lincoln reminded what they were fighting for, why they were fighting, what the purpose was, and why they must continue to fight for those who had lost their lives and for the nation that they founded itself. The nation needed to be exactly what it should be, a place where all men are created equal, of the people, by the people, for the people, and it shall not perish from this earth. That's why the Gettysburg Address is so famous. It's sort of a central point for everything Abraham Lincoln stood for. It's everything the Civil War stood for. It is about the freeing of an enslaved population within this nation that had supposedly been for all men, created equal. And here Abraham Lincoln encapsulates it in a short, purposeful, just well-articulated speech. It may have been quick, it may be short, as you can tell from my own reading of it, but it means a lot. And that is why the Gettysburg Address has endured with us. So all those young grade schoolers and high schoolers who were forced to memorize portions of this, and have heard 7 years ago, many, many times over, remember what it stands for. It's a very important speech in American history. I hope that gives you a little historical perspective.